Hey there, my name is John Negroni. I'm the film editor for theyoungfolks.com. I also host the Cinemaholics podcast, where you can hear me talk about even more movies in even more detail on a weekly basis with my co-host Will Ashton of killlighter.com. I've been away for a while. I've been on a bit of a hiatus because I recently got married. So I haven't been doing any official reviews since, I think Sonic was the last one. And I'm happy to be back. In addition to getting married, also finished my latest book. So I kind of had to put reviews on the back burner for a little bit, but I am back. And I'm very excited to be back because there are so many movies coming out this summer, and I've already missed two big ones, Top Gun Maverick and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, if you are curious what I thought of those movies and a bunch of the other films that have come out since April, you can always check out the Cinemaholics podcast. I've been watching those movies and reviewing them in podcast format, so that's certainly available. But okay. Jurassic World Dominion. This is the sixth film in the Jurassic Park franchise, a franchise that I truly love, the first film at least. And I think you can pretty much build this movie as not really the sixth film in all the Jurassic Parks. It's really the third film in the Jurassic World trilogy, because Jurassic World really rebooted the entire franchise in a big way. And in fact, I've always thought it's pretty fitting to compare this Jurassic World trilogy of like legacy sequels and spin-offs to the most recent Star Wars reboot trilogy of legacy sequels, since they have a lot in common. I mean, they both kicked off hugely successful reboot movies in 2015. They were both massively successful. They leaned heavily on nostalgia. They both then were followed up by moderately less successful second entries that kind of mix up the formula, that try to do things a bit differently, and people weren't super happy about that, at least some people. And then both of these trilogies are now finishing off with the same director from the first film, in this case, Colin Trevorrow, who in many ways is, in this last film, like The Rise of Skywalker, which is what I'm getting at, kind of returns to that heavy nostalgia bent that defined the first of these respective reboot trilogies. Now, okay, in case you pretty much forgot what happened in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which I'm sure at least some of you did, the remnant hordes of dinosaurs from that original Jurassic World theme park, they have been let loose upon the entire world at the hands of a young girl played once again in Jurassic World Dominion by Isabella Sermon. She happens to be a clone, so there's another Star Wars connection for you, and the technology that was used to clone her, DNA, has a close connection to what made the dinosaurs in the modern day possible. There's also a mysterious plague of locusts, kind of related to all this, sort of, that threatens to demolish the world's food chain, yada yada. So the shady tech company at the heart of this conspiracy is once again Biosyn. You might recognize that name. They're the same antagonists who, in the first Jurassic Park movie, they're the ones who recruited Dennis Nedry, the sort of rogue dude who was played by Wayne Knight, to steal the dinosaur embryos for them to be competitive with Engine. Now, in this film, they've created an entire eco-habitat of dinosaurs, some of them with feathers and all kinds of like deadly quirks and things like that the fans, I think, have been really hoping to see for a long time. Give us Jurassic Park with feather dinosaurs, and we're kind of getting that now, though not a ton. It's just, here and there. And characters from multiple Jurassic movies have to band together to stop Biosyn from unwittingly destroying the world with their reckless tampering of DNA. That might sound familiar. Now, the main selling point of this movie is kind of what I just said. It's taking the recently established protagonists, so you have Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. Chris Pratt was the former Raptor trainer, Owen Grady. Bryce Dallas Howard was the park manager who kind of became a radical environmentalist named Claire, and kind of colliding them with the iconic trio, the original trio of Spielberg's Jurassic Park. So in this film, there is a parallel story featuring the return of Sam Neill as Dr. Alan Grant. You also have Laura Dern as Dr. Ellie Sattler and Jeff Goldblum as Dr. Ian Malcolm. And each of these characters have popped up throughout most of these Jurassic Park movies, but this is the first time we get to see all of them back together since 1993, bouncing off of each other, interacting, and all of that. First, we should get the glaring problems out of the way. In terms of quality and screenplay, Dominion is truly all over the place. I mean, at its worst, it brings its own momentum and world building to a screeching halt whenever it just delivers these painfully irrelevant fan service moments and Easter eggs that they're both obvious, like too obvious to miss, but at the same time being just hopelessly unnecessary. But in terms of entertainment factor, I really do mean that this movie's all over the place, because for all of its lowest lows, in terms of the entertainment factor, the high of the highs, I think the spectacle is really here. The whole movie is thoroughly satisfying. So again, all over the place. You're kind of getting parts of this movie that are just really rough and hard to watch, and parts that are really fun to watch and really exciting. It's a mark on Trevorrow as a director who has always been dramatically inconsistent, in my opinion. He's capable on the one hand of setting up and paying off incredibly exciting action set pieces, while in other scenes, they're just completely inert. They're bafflingly underwritten. It's very strange. It's like you're watching just kind of a Frankenstein's monster of a movie. John Schwartzman, who was Trevorrow's cinematographer on multiple films, including Jurassic World, the first one, he returns here with a pretty equally inconsistent visual language compared to his work, especially even in Jurassic World. With some of these scenes in this movie, some of these shots are frame-worthy. They're genuinely inspired. I think that a lot of the language here, the creativity, the dramatic depth, it's really good stuff. While then you have these other moments that are just really simple and dull and drab, maybe even repetitive at times. And at its best, I think the Dominion, it delivers on the promise of merging the dinosaur world with our own, while also having the propulsive engine of an Indiana Jones adventure movie, which really surprised me in a good way. Gone is the experimental kind of like, let's just stay in one mansion sort of structure of Fallen Kingdom. As Dominion, it truly is a globe-trotting kind of movie. You go to lots of different locations. It feels like an adventure. There are all kinds of environments for these carnivores to show up and chew on and all of that. And I think the film's best section actually is probably its swashbuckling middle chase sequence in an underground dino black market. It stretches out into the streets and the nearby apartments, and you have all kinds of violent dinosaurs getting a chance to rip bad guys a new one. And at the same time, our heroes, scrappy as ever, struggle to escape with their lives, and it's really good stuff. And you can at least credit Dominion with having a clear sense of its themes throughout the whole thing, because it's the same. They're the same themes that these movies have always fallen back on. I think nature is as beautiful and sacred as it is dangerous and unrelenting and unpredictable. We've seen that preached many, many times in these Jurassic Park movies. And I think the Jurassic World films have been interesting in the way that they've like progressed that idea to being less about, well, that means that mankind and dinosaurs are better off apart. They're better off in like different eras. That was the whole idea. And these movies have always been like, well, what if they could, cohabitate? What if they could find a way to be together? And at the same time, Dominion, it gets a little bit too preachy in this regard, because I think that it constantly lionizes and props up its protagonists without really examining their inner conflicts and hang-ups. These movies they don't give us a reason to care about their place in this new world and their flaws. And they're all just simply on the right side of the issue. You're just kind of waiting for them to win the day. The conflict just comes down to, how are we going to get out of this mess? Not really like, are we doing the right thing in any deeper, meaningful way? Even the trio from the original film, like there's nothing really going on there in terms of character development. And it's not surprising, I think, that this trilogy ends with such a kind of surface level romp in terms of writing and character development. I mean, they have to be thinking that that is going to be what makes the most money for this kind of movie. And unfortunately, they might be right in terms of the risk factor of trying too hard to be different, and that resulting in, a bad movie, like an outright bad movie, as opposed to this, which is just kind of a safe and dull movie for the most part. And I think that it's easy to call this one, especially if you compare it to the original film, I think it's easy to call this just another disappointment in the Jurassic franchise for probably a lot of people, not everybody, but people who come into this still expecting this franchise to evolve. I'm sorry, this isn't it. Like it's just not going to happen, I don't think, anytime soon. But in terms of wrapping up this trilogy, I'd say it's good enough. I don't think that you're going to have a terrible time watching this if you kind of go into it as somebody who kind of liked the first two films, or you're just here to just enjoy Jurassic Park-esque sort of things, and you just kind of have to manage your expectations that, it's not going to be the original film in terms of just hitting in every single like quadrant, not just being fun survival horror, not just, being this really interesting message about nature and history and mankind, but really just kind of being like, okay, we're doing Jurassic Park again. And we're just kind of going through the motions a little bit at this point, but they kind of make the most of it in some of these scenes. There are some things here that are really interesting to watch. So Jurassic World Dominion, it opens in theaters everywhere starting June 10th. through Universal. I'm super happy to be back on doing reviews again. I've missed it a lot, and hoping to do this more consistently. Just got to manage my time and everything like that. So yeah, stay here and definitely subscribe and do all that good stuff if you want, and I'll see you all on the next one.